exploring the intersection of AI and HR. This is the AI HR Daily Podcast.
Hello and welcome everyone to our 6th episode already of our AI HR Daily Podcast. And today we have the 3rd deep dive session around AI use cases across the HR department. In the last 2 episodes, we talked about workforce planning and recruiting and all related AI use cases here. And today we will really dive deep into onboarding and the AI use cases that are possible in onboarding and that are adding a lot of value already in companies in the onboarding field. So really excited about this one. And yeah, Chris, what's your feeling about onboarding and AI right now? What were your experiences in onboarding for a new employer, also on a new project while working for a client with your employer maybe?
I mean, onboarding is always a topic that has never been on point before. I think at my past employer was very structured, and I like that process at least. When you join the first day, you actually have tasks to do, because we've heard this a ton of times that people join new companies and actually don't really know what to do. Then they have a few appointments booked, but it's a bit wild. So I appreciate if the onboarding process is super structured, has a clear path, you have tasks that you have to work through, and in probably over 80% of all companies right now, this is not given, right? But nevertheless, yeah, I mean, we've already gone through some implementations. Exactly. So as you're showing here already, 82% have a better retention if they have a super good onboarding process of companies, and 12% of companies or 12% of employees of companies say that their company actually does it well. And that 12% is a destruction of the whole onboarding.
That's crazy. I mean, it's a really wide gap which we are seeing here in terms of how is the onboarding actually structured and how much possible value can you get out of onboarding in terms of increasing retention of the employees, and therefore obviously having someone longer in the company, having not the cost of finding someone new, offboarding someone which is leaving. I mean, we talked about the cost of a rotation of a employee already a few times, and this is quite a heavy cost drive on HR department, right?
What I think is even crazier is if you think about retention. In the early days of hiring someone, right? We're talking about the first couple of weeks while we're in the onboarding process, that this has so much impact on a long-term retention, even though the amounts can be super different, right? So you're talking about a couple of weeks of onboarding that can impact years of retention.
Yeah.
Which I think has a lot to do with also cultural integration, cultural onboarding, not only technical and project-related onboarding. But that's what impressed me the most about this statistic.
Yes, sure. I mean, obviously, this is not a case where AI can obviously solve all the onboarding problems. As you mentioned, right, you have also the cultural layer, which you certainly need to consider here. But the number in general, no matter looking at AI or not, is really, really interesting. Looking then from our lens now, maybe still at the AI use cases, which we see adding a lot of value in onboarding. Going really from the very first day to then the last few days of this onboarding period, which is more or less most of the times roughly 90 days. We see these kind of things or these kind of use cases as kind of core pillars to make onboarding better from an AI perspective. And you see here now 5 outlined. We will go in depth into all of them. How are they working? Why are they adding value? And how can they be implemented? And also in what order they should be implemented. And I think the first one is already a really interesting one, looking here at the personalized journey you can provide with AI when onboarding someone based on the role, based on the seniority, based on the location, based on the skills, based on also the interests of the new employee.
But the question for me is really, how does this look in practice, right? Onboarding, if you personalize the whole onboarding journey. So onboarding consists of different aspects, right? So as we said, onboarding does not only like, hey, this is your role now, these are your responsibilities, this is what you have to do, but it's like 1,000 other topics. You have to go through admin, you have to go through the HR, you have to maybe fill out some additional documents, you have to sign some topics, you have to get your new devices. So there's so many topics where I'm still thinking about a bit more, if you want to personalize it for every person, what systems actually have this process in place so the AI knows exactly what has to be done, right? And maybe also, I don't know what your opinion is here. I think there's a lot of solutions that are not built yet, even, where we have to look into this, right?
Absolutely. Obviously, there's like two layers or like a few different layers on this onboarding journey, looking at the tech provisioning side, access provisioning, and like all these kind of topics. Looking at then really the onboarding on like these really company specifics and project specifics, and then looking also on the cultural layer. But I think very much right now the solutions are focused on the first two layers. So really providing automated access to different systems, onboarding people, educating people on these systems automatically, and then also onboarding people on like company processes and project details. And I think here really this tailored onboarding is unfolding a lot of value, because the system understands where is this person coming from, what are the skills, what are the needed skills going forward, what kind of processes will this person be a lot exposed to in the company, what kind of processes are can be neglected, is he in a leadership position, and so on and so forth. So this can be obviously then of huge value.
I still think, because how this current journey is going right now with AI, there's going to be a lot more autonomous onboarding, in a way where you have a hiring manager or someone, the boss of the person that is joining on that day, actually just brief an AI agent in a couple of minutes verbally, like, hey, how's this actually going to look like, right? And we've built systems like that where we can map input very easily. The question is just like, how is it presented to the employee, right? As a checklist, as a process, as and so on and so forth. But I think this is where the journey is going to go, right? You're going to have one AI agent that is specifically in charge of this whole process. And the process is also very clear. You brief the person, the agent once, the agent communicates everything with onboard.
Yeah, that's a really cool like angle to implement this. And I think this is also then the perfect kind of segue to the second use case, or the second use case is really close to this personalized journey in terms of making a Q&A bot accessible for the employees, which can then answer all these questions around like, what are the policies on leave? How can I access this system? How is this process looking like? Who should I talk to if I have this question, right? All of these questions which you normally ask the HR department or people in this department can be as we saw in some research, 80% or 80% of them can be handled via an agentic system, which can then automatically get the details for you. And if you see now here the amount of questions which are coming in these first like weeks, this is an insane workload which can be taken off from the HR department, and an insane like speed kind of which can be gained for the new employee, which will obviously
For sure.
equate in someone being happier, being able to add value earlier, and these kind of things. So I think this is a pretty clean and clear use case for the onboarding domain, right?
I can just imagine and remember how many questions the HR team was flooded with by early employees. And we all know this. 80% of these questions are like generic questions, which are overlapping with every new onboarded employee, and 20% is more like personalized. Hey, I have this case, this in the situation. I already booked a vacation in the first 6 weeks. How does that work? Right. So all of these questions are specific, but the broad amount can easily be covered by an AI agent, and this AI agent actually learns from all of the questions as well. So if there are any questions that are not answered in the first step, the HR team still can give input and reply to certain questions and train the agent.
Exactly.
So this is going to have so much leverage down the line and free up so much time of the HR team to focus more on what they actually should be doing.
Yeah, and as you said, right, it's kind of a flywheel which is becoming more powerful the more you use it, right? Because then you have questions which you can't answer, then the HR department provides this input, and then the input is also added as a memory piece to the agent, and then the agent next time can provide the answer completely autonomously. So this is really a nice flying wheel which is then unfolding. Nice. So then the third use case which we have, again, really close to the first two ones, I think, is the ability to understand where has my new employee gaps around the product knowledge which we have, internal tools, a compliance which we need to comply with different regulators, or like core like skills, and then really providing a tailored educational plan for the specific employee to speed them up or to speed run them on these gaps, or to close these gaps in a speed run with these highly tailored educational initiatives and also interactive initiatives, right?
Okay, so simple example, you're hiring a go-to-market manager or a growth manager that has to have a bit more the all-rounder position, has to have experience in organic postings plus performance marketing. And the person only has like a broad experience in performance marketing, but has not done a lot like on the other topics, on the organic posting topics. So you're literally saying here, hey, we know that person is lacking some skills, but has the capability to learn very quickly. So let's train the person as much as possible as we can in the early weeks. Because normally, also, like we all know this, in the early weeks, they're lost time. So you always lose a couple of weeks until employee is really onboarded and really can provide value. So why not leverage this time where the employee is still like sitting around to train them exactly where they need to?
Yeah, and it's also obviously you need to have your data in place in terms of like skill mapping and needs and so on and so forth. But if so, it's an easy win, right? Because you just talk to the employee once and you understand, for example, oh, methodology wise, this salesperson is really strong. He knows that he needs to follow up. He knows how to use all of these cold outreach systems which we have in place and so on. But the product knowledge around our product and what kind of values our product is adding is a bit lagging. And therefore you just spin up this learning path and bring him up to speed there, which is an insane leverage which you can then use.
Insane.
And also can use to track who of my employees is on what kind of skill level on a specific domain, which is then obviously
we're thinking about so simple things right now, but I'm like we've had cases where we implemented stuff like this, Tim, where it was more around like, hey, we guys are using SAP SuccessFactors, and the employee has used it once or twice, but they actually doesn't know how to work it, right? So we can give the AI the capability to actually train employees to use specific software tools and to make them understand what processes are in place, what workflows are in place, what automations are in place, so that the onboarding is a lot more autonomous and not super, it doesn't have to be super human driven, right? Because human driven, always double cost.
of course. And you might miss something, you might explain something not in the way the new employee is understanding things. And yeah, here you just have like a mechanism in place which helps you to educate people much more broadly, as you said, right? And then obviously, for example, leverage tools much more efficient, which makes them again happier in their job. Therefore, they stay longer, and which allows them to add more value earlier, which is obviously the goal of the whole onboarding journey in the end, right? And yeah, I mean, in order to be able to add value or work in the first place, you obviously have to do all of this like initial paperwork, as we already discussed a bit about, in terms of like getting access to different systems, filling out forms, doing the filing around the form, setting up all these entries in different accounts, and also maybe communicating with external parties. And here, this is maybe the use case which has the clearest ROI, because if you automate these kind of like tedious and repetitive jobs in a not only AI way, but also obviously in traditional automation way, you have a huge leverage. You can, as we also see here, bring people much quicker to higher productivity levels, and obviously reduce also the number of errors which you have sometimes when people are doing it on a manual basis, which directly results in a clear cost cut exercise, which you can succeed in you implementing this and automating these kind of reoccurring processes for onboarding.
And I mean, yeah, one might think, hey, how do you get to exactly $4,129 of savings? So most likely what they did in this study is they looked at the working hours that employees spent on certain tasks and counted it down based on their salaries. And this is one way of seeing it. But I think the more scalable way of seeing it is actually the more employees you get, the more workload you have, the more employees you would hire. So the current timestamp is one way of looking at it, and the current like cost saving. But I really prefer to look at it from a scaling perspective. How is this going to look in 48 months? How is this going to look in 72 months when employees double and the double the workload can actually be handled by the same AI agent? And this is where you will feel the cost and the potential of such an AI agent in place.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think these were like 4 pretty clear use cases, at least from a like conceptual perspective. So let's look at the last one, which is detecting flight risk in the early days. This flight risk topic already a few times in our podcast here, in terms of like detecting autonomously that someone is not really happy in their current situation, and they are getting more likely and more likely to leave the company, at least based on like different sentiments, based on participation and collaboration patterns. This can be really nicely detected right now with AI. Obviously, from a compliance perspective, a highly sensitive topic, but it can be implemented in a way that also the compliance layer is well covered here, and therefore a really interesting use case. What's the value behind this? Again, obviously, if you detect much more early, as we see here now, that someone is not feeling happy and is thinking about to leave again, you can take measures to make them stay. And also AI can help here to suggest you what kind of measures and model what kind of measures would have what effect, compared to like a manager maybe noticing this much later, and also maybe not coming up with the best possible measure to keep this person. So this is a huge potential value driver. Obviously, therefore, you have to be really advanced in your data journey as well, and also in your compliance setup, right?
As you said, there's 2 sides here. The first side is looking at the employer, and because either the employer is not happy with the employee or the employee is not happy with the employer. And the second side is the employee joining and thinking, hey, what is this onboarding journey? I'm not happy at all. No employee really cares about me. So I think there's these 2 perspectives, especially in the early days. And that's also the main reason why companies have probation periods in place. Exactly for that reason. If one or the other is not happy, there's an easy exit path without any long-term commitments. However, as you said correctly, the data is super, super sensitive. If you are not handling the data in the right way, you're going to get into a lot of trouble, especially if the employee writes with the AI agent in certain ways, asks certain questions, maybe even double checks on questions or tries to get behind barriers, right? Learning more around politics and structures. And I think this is where it gets a bit critical, where you have to be very careful. And also, this has not really been implemented yet in practice. So AI agents are early to this process. I have not seen a tool yet that handles this specific use case on point yet. There are sentiments, right? And we talked about them already in the past. Around like, I remember in our first podcast around the generic value chain, we talked also about people coming too late to meetings, people not having their cameras on in the calls. So all of these mechanisms can also be evaluated in this process.
Yeah. But as you said, right, this is like a really advanced use cases from like a data availability perspective, from like a model perspective, how to interpret all of these values. and also from the compliance perspective. These use cases will come and they will also add a lot of value, but it takes a lot of time. And these are kind of like the things which maybe are something which you would like to implement later on in your AI and HR journey. And I think this visual is also very much aligned with this statement, right? So we see here the sentiment detection as a really last point we would go for when we talk about AI, implementing AI use cases and onboarding. And maybe just like briefly going here from left to right. So compliance automation, in our opinion, as already mentioned, is the way to start for the onboarding domain, because you have the clearest ROI. You look at all these processes which come again for each employee which is starting, and then you try to really automate as much as possible all of these things and make them as quick as possible. From there, you then go on with the QA assistant, which is still, I would say a low-hanging fruit. Obviously, you need to have your data in place. You need to have a taxonomy on top of this to be able to retrieve this properly. You need to have this mechanism to then also feed the system with new data inputs provided from the HR department based on queries which could not have been fulfilled, where the agent was not able to fulfill them. But also quite a low-hanging fruit. And then we have the topic around like providing a customized or tailored onboarding journey and providing a customized and tailored learning path. These are high impact use cases for sure, but these are both blocked on the same thing. You need a clear data layer, so you need a clear understanding what kind of person is coming in. So what seniority is there? What skills are there? What are the expectations about this person? And what kind of needs has the specific job role? And if this can be really cleanly mapped, the ability to build journeys on top of this from like an onboarding perspective, but also from this learning path perspective, are the easier part, I would say. So really getting the taxonomy layer right and the data input layer right is here the critical thing. And if you then look at the last part, it's really the sentiment detection, understanding is someone about to leave or not. High payoff here again, but as in detail discussed, a quite tricky topic to master for now.
Yes, sir. Good summary.
And I think this is very much aligned also with the final kind of framing, with the framing how we see how AI should be used in onboarding. It's really to automate the admin heavy part, and then really to show up for the human when there is need for this cultural layer, for example, which we discussed also really early in this podcast here, right?
Yeah, I mean, the admin layer is the easiest one to implement for now, because there are agents in place where we can structure workflows around certain triggers and execute certain tasks pretty quickly. Where it gets interesting is, as you said, emotions, culture, human-related topics that an AI is not capable of analyzing yet correctly, or potentially can, but is not allowed to.
Exactly.
So this is where we're going to see a lot of development within the next couple of years. But overall, I think onboarding is a bit under. So we already talked about workforce planning, which is a bit more internal. Then recruiting already includes some external aspects because we have external employee candidates. And now onboarding gets again like an external becoming an internal, where it's super critical that you get this person like on board. And we know that this process is not easy. And also no one really has time for this. So I remember when we were working in the past as an employee, Tim, if new people joined, I was there and I tried to make the best out of the onboarding journey for every new employee, but you cannot be there 24/7 and answer every question. You can take them along, guide them, hold their hand as much as possible, but I just think that the AI could just support a bit more in the process of being there.
Exactly. And it's treated way too much as an afterthought. And we saw also the research today, right? So there's so much potential value which you can get out of a streamlined and efficient and effective onboarding process. That's insane, right? And based on this, w- I think that this is a clear signal that companies should invest more in their onboarding processes because the potential return on invest is quite huge and impressive, to be honest.
Every head of HR should implement onboarding in their AI flows, because as we saw, 83% of increase of retention only because onboarding is done well,
Easy.
right? And if your employees say that your onboarding was not that great, that's your biggest red flag to start working on something in that direction and implementing AI in the same process.
I would say that's the perfect closing for this episode. It was a pleasure as always, and looking forward to the next deep dive.
Yes, sir. Have a great day. We'll chat.
Bye bye.